This is video number 6 in the series of terms for the Introduction to Judaism and Long Distance Conversion course. These are terms on Jewish history. First term is chosen people, the doctrine from the Torah, Asher Bacharbanu, that you, God, chose the children of Israel. Not a doctrine of superiority by any sense, but a special role the Jewish people have in testifying and witnessing God's word. Anti-Semitism is the concept of hatred of, actually Semites are people from the Middle East, but today it's usually associated with Jews, a term coined in Germany a couple hundred years ago, and it describes not only from a few hundred years, but all of historical anti-Jewish activity. Light to the nations is a phrase from the prophet Isaiah that the Jews should be L'or Goyim, a light to the nations, and has a special responsibility to teach God's ideas. Eretz Yisrael means the land of Israel. The first temple was built by King Solomon in the 10th century BCE and destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. Second temple was rebuilt by the Jews who were led back by King Cyrus of Persia in the early 500s BCE and then destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE, and that was the last big temple we had. Galut is a word for the Jews who live outside of Israel, the diaspora. The Bible, and there's a YouTube on the Hebrew Bible, consists of 3 parts, 39 books. The Torah is the first part, the prophets are the middle, and the writings are the third. Judges is the second book of the prophetic section, and they were leaders of the Jewish people who rose at various times to help the Jews in trouble, like Samson and Deborah. Prophets, well, it's the name of a section of the Bible, and the literary prophets, there are 15 of them, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and then 12 of the smaller ones like Micah, Malachi, Hosea, Amos, etc. Kings. Well, the first king of Israel was King Saul, and then followed by King David and his son King Solomon. After his death, the kingdom split into 2, and there were many kings in the north and the south after that. First commonwealth was the Jews' sovereignty over the land of Israel, as promised by God from the time of Joshua all the way until it was lost. First in 722, the Assyrians conquered the north, and then in 586, the Babylonians conquered the south. The Assyrian conquest was in 722, and they conquered the north and took away 10 tribes, and they're lost. Babylonian exile, that was the Iraqis, the ancient Babylonians, who conquered the temple and destroyed the temple and conquered Judea in 586 and exiled the Jews to Babylonia. The Persian period followed that, when the Iranians, then the Persians, conquered the Babylonians and let the Jews come back and rebuild the temple. And the story of Esther supposedly took place during the Persian period. Alexander the Great then conquered the Persians in 333 BCE, and that started the Greek period, which didn't end until the Romans control later. The Roman period, that lasted for several hundred years, and that was the Jews experienced the destruction of the temple in 70. The Romans took over from the descendants of the Maccabees around 63 BCE. There was another Roman massacre of Jews in 132 to 135, and slowly the Roman period ended and other groups took over the land of Israel. Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes, I have a YouTube on that. There are 3 major groups that lived around the time of the early rabbis, around 0. Pharisees are the precursors of the modern rabbis. The Sadducees were the ones who maintained the temple cult, and the Essenes were the ascetics who lived in the outskirts of Jerusalem and practiced very severe laws of the Bible and bodily purity. Crusades were initiated by the popes of Europe in the Middle Ages, 1096. There were 3 of them. They were designed to end the sovereignty of the Muslims over the Holy Land, but they ended up in Europe massacring many Jews. Pogroms is the name for the vicious anti-Semitic acts, especially in Russia in pre-modern times, in the 1800s and the early 1900s. Marranos is the name for the Jews who in 1492, when the Spanish Inquisition occurred, and forced Jews, killed Jews, forced Jews to flee, and forced Jews to convert. Some Jews converted secretly, publicly to Christianity, but maintained their Judaism secretly, and they're still practicing Jews. or some that have Jewish blood. So that ends session 6.